You must have seen this building where leaders of the world take pride in getting pictured. It is Parthenon of Athens, where the statue of Athena, the goddess of power and wisdom, stood 2,500 years ago. Downhill between Parthenon and the Athena statue, a complete city was facing. A sculptor lived on the other height, where the goddesses of Athena and Parthenon were quite visible. Standing at this height, the son of the sculptor used to question himself. How could a statue safeguard the city? Many questions struck his mind that had no answer. These questions led him to drink the bowl of poison. It was Socrates, the great martyr of the truth. Socrates, as a boy, used to observe his father chiseling the stones with pointed and sharp tools, in such a manner that the image of a lion was shaped out of it. The appearance of the beautiful shapes from the stones, he wondered. Once, he asked his father how he chose the tools suitable to bear hammering for carving out a shape, and how much and where could hammering produce a particular form. The father, being busy with his job, ignored the query, saying, "I will let you know all when you grow up." But Socrates would not wait until he was grown up and wanted a quick answer. The father replied, "For it, you need to imagine the lion inside the stone. You feel the lion caged in the stone, and you are determined to free it. Now the better you will see the lion inside the stone, the stronger your sense of using the right kind of tools and the required hammering, that would liberate the lion." This answer impressed Socrates too much. The mother of Socrates was the midwife when his father was a sculptor. One day, he asked his mother about the nature of her job. The mother replied, "I only help the mother deliver the baby and nothing else." Socrates picked up a little sense of if, but he continued to think and went to sleep with his mother. From the answers of his parents, Socrates got the point that actual things were hidden and invisible. It was up to us to deliver them. Otherwise, they remained curtained behind our ignorance. Like others, the mother of Socrates used to tell Socrates the stories of the gods and goddesses at night. Socrates was in the habit of asking questions, so he also raised points in these tales. On the queries about the gods and goddesses, the mother silenced him, mentioning their respectable place. But Socrates was the embodiment of asking questions. He was in a fix to understand that if the gods and the goddesses had so many elevated positions, then why do they hate, show jealousy, anger, and fight like the common people? Why do they punish the people and inflict perdition on them? He reflected, but he failed to get the answer. He wanted to know the answer, but asking questions meant landing himself in troubled waters. The kids and the adults did not even pay attention to Socrates, let alone give answers to his questions. Because unlike other Greeks, he did not have an attractive face. When he was young, people called him with ugly names due to his unattractive face. He felt very teased by it and wondered why some were beautiful and others had ugly faces. With these questions in mind, he used to go pottering. Here he continued to watch the earth being given a particular shape on a heap of lime. He asked the potter why his pots were so beautiful. There were many other potters, but why particularly were your pots so distinctive? The potter replied, "I do not know much, but I can say a beautiful pot is good and free of defects." Socrates had begun to understand somewhat, that the way beautiful statues came out of the stones and the pots from the earth, the same way the answers to his questions would also come out of the layers of darkness. While growing up, Socrates also had to adopt the family vocation, but his father soon learned his son could not become a good sculptor. And it was not because of the work of Socrates, but for some other reason. The reason that Socrates was more inclined to know about the people than the stones. He was more interested in the customers than in selling things, so he used to have long discussions with them. It was an era when Athens was the most popular city in the world. It was the only city where democracy was followed. It was not democracy as enforced today, but in its early form. In that democracy, only males had the right to vote to decide important matters that also related to the courts. The people of Athens took huge pride in democracy as its pioneer. The ships were almost from all over the world and anchored at the coasts of Athens. The people from the outside world were amazed to see the splendid statues made of marble. They thought magicians had made these statues and had a chance to learn new things. But Socrates was following a different line. He drew one question from another and sought the answer from those who met him. Socrates used to question the veracity of an answer, no matter how sure a person was about it. He used to hold long debates to know the opposite of what had been answered. His lengthy cross-questioning puzzled the others. Some people deliberately asked him a question to get a series of queries from him. People liked Socrates not as a serious person, but as a conjurer. It was the time when the popularity of Socrates was growing throughout Athens. The gods and goddesses and their tales over the generations played a big role in the life of Athens. No one could tolerate anything against the gods and the goddesses. Any question by Socrates about the gods and goddesses was countered through conventional tales about them. But the people disliked questions from them. Most of the Greek gods lived in the sky. Apollo was the god of the sun, and Jupiter was the principal god of the heavens, and Selene was the goddess of the moon. But one day, a Greek jolted both Socrates and Athens. One day, Socrates was helping his parents with the construction of a big temple. When a person came along with an eminent politician of the city, Pericles, this man had been observing the skies and heavenly bodies over the years. This man was Anaxagoras, who said that no gods and goddesses lived in the skies, and that the sun, the planets, and the moon were just rocks. Rather, the moon did not have its own light and received it from the sun. There were ditches on the moon where human beings may also be present. It was amazing to know all this about 2,500 years ago, when no scientific instruments like telescopes were available. The people of Athens turned against Anaxagoras due to these thoughts. Regarding Socrates as a wise man, the custodian of the temple asked him, "Do you also think the sun and the moon are not gods but pieces of metal?" The custodian expected Socrates to go against Anaxagoras, but Socrates did not deny Anaxagoras, saying, "I do not have an argument to counter his views. Similarly, I also cannot support his ideas, therefore, I have not reached any conclusion so far." The custodian and his associates became highly dissatisfied with this answer from Socrates. They asked him, "What matters to you to draw a conclusion from it? Whether our elders were liars, whether our gods are liars, you sound us also against the gods." It was the discourse that produced rivals of Socrates in Athens. In the meantime, a court in Athens summoned Anaxagoras, and he was tried for apostasy. He was to be subject to death or banishment in the event of conviction. Some members of the judiciary liked Anaxagoras, who saved him from death and ordered him to be banned. Hence, an astrologist could hardly save his life and went back to his country. Anaxagoras came and went, but he changed Socrates forever. Socrates realized that only wonder and questions were not sufficient to fathom the truth. For it, interaction with the experienced and intellectuals was very necessary. Therefore, Socrates embarked on that job. He bore in mind that Athens did not value a highly intelligent person. He recalled the words of Anaxagoras, "I am born to explore the universe, not for fame and comfort." It was a change that made Socrates popular, not only in Athens, but in the whole of Greece. He was now counted among the philosophers. People felt honored by inviting him to their homes, while outsiders aspired to see him. But Socrates imposed a self-censor. He did not openly express his views, because he had witnessed the end of Anaxagoras. Despite that, he used to convey his thoughts in plain language. His disciples, like Plato, Crito, and others, regarded him as the most intelligent man in the world. The statue of the principal god, Apollo, stood in a temple in another city in Greece, Delphi. Under that statue, a devout woman was seated. The Greek gods put questions to Apollo, and she would answer them. It was a common belief that whatever this devotee said was, in fact, from the god Apollo. The popular belief was so firm that a passionate disciple of Socrates, Chaerephon, went to the temple of Apollo. He asked the devotee in the temple whether anyone else in Athens was more intelligent than Socrates. He received the answer that no one is more intelligent than Socrates. The jubilant Chaerephon ran towards the city to tell the people that the Apollo also declared Socrates a genius. Nobody was wiser than Socrates. This narrative divided the people of Athens after a section admitted what Apollo had said about Socrates, while others made fun of it, saying that Chaerephon had bribed the devotee to get a favorable opinion, but it was Socrates himself who was most surprised by Apollo's remarks. He thought Apollo must have used his name as an example. I am ignorant and still believe I am so. The occult voice of the god has termed me the most intelligent, as I understand my lack of knowledge. After this endorsement by the god, Socrates became a big attraction for the youth. A gathering of youth had a person who played a key role in the life and death of Socrates. It was Alcibiades, a charismatic young man from Greece. He was a member of a rich, elite family and a naval commander. He was well known for his bravery and masculine features. This man was equally impressed and jealous of the popularity of Socrates. He wanted Socrates to admire him like other Greeks did. He became a pupil of Socrates, but Socrates was not impressed by his attraction and riches. This fact brought Alcibiades closer to Socrates. Once a decision was taken by the authorities to send an army mission from Athens to Sicily, Alcibiades was appointed commander of the mission that failed miserably. The mission failed so badly that the fleet of Athens was destroyed and the soldiers were either killed or arrested. Alcibiades did not return after this expedition and joined the Spartans, the rivals of Athens. It goes that he did not come back since he feared his death sentence in Athens. Alcibiades also took away the goodwill and popularity of Socrates. Alcibiades was declared the worst traitor in Athens, and Socrates named him his teacher. Since a section of people was dead against Socrates, so it took malign Socrates to connect him with Alcibiades. There was a central theater in Athens where dramas were performed, so Socrates was jeered at in these dramas. Socrates was portrayed as a damned person in these dramas. He was depicted as a person who had denied the existence of the gods and instigated the youth to debate with the elders. These plays were growing in popularity, but at the same time, Socrates was also anticipating threats. These dramas were produced by a particular class of people who were quite influential. This class was also in power. In this situation, Athens had another tragedy that ruined the grandeur of Athens. It was the defeat Athens suffered at the hands of the Spartans in the 27-year-long Peloponnesian War. Athens surrendered in this war. The Spartans, who won, also had Alcibiades among them. It was a military failure, the cause of which needed to be judged rationally. For common men, it was a tough mental exercise. Many people were already dissatisfied with Socrates when he had also been disgraced through dramas. So many people in Athens saw, from that perspective, their defeat in the war. They held beliefs and thoughts about Socrates as the cause of the god's wrath that brought the defeat. A class of power holders in Athens also felt irritated by the political ideas of Socrates, because he had also raised questions about the democracy in Athens. When they questioned whether a ship captain should be elected through votes, Socrates replied, "No." He said only marine experts should decide who would be the captain of the ship. He held that democracy was an art, and everyone could not be given the right to vote without learning this art. One day in 399 BC, Crito came to Socrates and told him to get ready, as the ruling people had decided to try him in a case. The whole episode of Anaxagoras struck the mind of Socrates as he heard this news, so he began to prepare himself for the future course of action against him. On the day of the trial, Socrates reached the court along with his friends. A jury of 500 members was before him. The matter of the life and death of Socrates was to be decided in only a day-long trial. After the decision, no right to appeal or retrial was available to him. The trial and the decision were made on the same day. The case was to be presented in 3 hours, and Socrates also had to get equal time to defend himself. The water clock was turned on. The petitioner presented the charges that Athens needed the youth to earn the pleasure of the gods and defend the city, but Socrates was destroying both of these objects. Socrates was also held guilty of the defeat to Athens at the hands of the Spartans and the present disgrace. Socrates had time to defend himself after hearing the charges against him for 180 minutes. The water clock was rewound. Socrates had the most precious 180 minutes to prove his innocence. But Socrates did a weird thing. Instead of defending himself, he did the same thing he was blamed for. He addressed the public instead of the jury and repeated the ideas he had been presenting. He mocked the jury and exposed hypocrisy and double standards in society. He said, "Can anyone on the jury say the allegations against him are true? They are all telling lies." He said, "People will be wrong if they think I will give up speaking the truth only for the sake of my life." More than the death, I will be concerned about knowing whether I am right or wrong in my thoughts. Socrates dwelled at length on the social and political system of Athens instead of presenting the defense. After his speech, voting was held. 280 of the 500 members held him guilty, and the rest absolved him. According to the law, he was convicted and sentenced to death. According to the law, Socrates was to choose the mode of his death himself. When asked, in what way would he like to die? Socrates replied, I will like to have a dinner at the government's expense. When meant, he had opted for hemlock, the strongest poison in Athens, for his death. His friends suggested that he seek legal help. The law provided Socrates with the right to urge the jury to reduce his death penalty to exile. But Socrates disappointed all his well-wishers. He said, if I escape the truth in my own city, Athens, it will be hard for me to speak the truth in any other city. I can't hold back the truth by keeping quiet. Let me be sacrificed on the altar of the truth. Socrates was put in a jail cell. A couple of days were left until the implementation of the death penalty. His friend and disciple, Crito, who was a rich man, planned to take Socrates out of jail by bribing the jailer and the guards of the jail. Crito disclosed his plan to Socrates in a meeting with him. But Socrates refused to follow this plan. He told Crito that it is more important for him to lead the life in the right way than merely leading the life. The right way does not permit me to break the law of the land out of fear of death. I have been punished by the court according to the law, and I will suffer that penalty. On the last morning, Crito came to see Socrates in jail, where his friends and students were also present. Socrates had been shackled. Crito felt much pain seeing Socrates in shackles. Socrates asked the jailer to bring the bowl of poison hemlock, so he brought it. Socrates told his friends and relatives that one should die quietly. He told them to be patient and composed after he had drunk the poison. Socrates bravely took the bowl of poison in his hand. Plato said, then Socrates' hand did not shiver the least. He took the bowl of poison to his lips and put the whole hemlock down his stomach. He strolled for a few minutes and lay down, putting on a blanket as the poison became effective. Within minutes, he began to go numb from toe to toe. When the poison affected his chest, he covered his head with a sheet. In his last words, he asked Crito to repay for the cock that was a liability to him. Crito replies, I will do. Anything else? He asked, but received no answer. Socrates had gone into a very deep sleep.